The root of many of your life struggles is caring too much about how others see you. This deep concern for others' opinions often becomes the main source of your dissatisfaction. Today we're going to explore the book, The Courage to Be Disliked, co-authored by Japanese philosopher Ichiro Kishimi and writer Fumitake Koga. The authors argue that our inner anxiety is always tied to our social environment. There is no purely internal worry. In their view, the presence of others is behind every fear. Kishimi and Koga claim that all personal problems can be easily resolved. Life only feels difficult because we overcomplicate it. Their central idea is this: happiness requires the bravery to accept being disliked. True freedom means not needing approval from others. According to them, your issue isn't a lack of confidence, it's a lack of courage. The ability to be content with yourself includes the readiness to be disliked. Once you develop that courage, your interactions with others become much lighter. In this video, we'll unpack key lessons from the book: how unhappiness forms, why approval seeking is a trap, and what it really takes to live a fulfilled life. Kishimi and Koga believe that every person, no matter their past, is capable of happiness. The key difference between happy and unhappy individuals is how open they are to change. Their work draws heavily from Alfred Adler, a psychologist who believed the self is a unified system. Our actions, emotions, thoughts, and bodily responses all work toward a common aim. Adler suggested that everything we do serves a goal, even if we aren't aware of it. These goals don't just influence how we feel, they shape who we are. Kishimi and Koga expand on this by arguing that Adler didn't believe in fixed personalities. Instead, he saw individuals through the lens of the lifestyle they've chosen. Your thoughts, behaviors, and emotional patterns form a style of living you once chose because you thought it would help you reach your aims. From this view, someone who behaves antisocially isn't inherently antisocial. It's a strategy for achieving a certain outcome. Furthermore, emotions aren't just spontaneous reactions. They're crafted to serve our goals. If someone feels nervous before a job interview, it may not be that anxiety is stopping them from succeeding. It could be that the person's deeper aim is to avoid failure, and fear is the tool they use to stay away from risk. Kishimi and Koga also respond to the idea that past trauma determines your current state. While childhood experiences can influence your goals, they argue that it's still up to you to decide your direction. In the book, they assert that no life event directly causes success or failure. We don't suffer from trauma itself, but from the way we interpret it. We aren't bound by our past. We assign meaning to experiences, and that meaning guides us. Your current and future life is entirely in your own hands. So if happiness is within reach, why do people sometimes choose misery? According to the authors, unhappiness can be a tactic, one that allows people to justify avoiding difficult goals. As discussed, emotions often follow the objectives we secretly set. While everyone faces moments of disappointment, chronic unhappiness often stems from having a persistent, frustrating goal, especially one tied to social validation. Kishimi and Koga emphasize that your happiness is closely connected to what you're trying to achieve in your relationships. Are you trying to win approval, or are you aiming to make a difference? Many unhappy people chase validation, believing their worth depends on being liked by parents, peers, or society. But this mindset often leads to pain. They assume that being liked equals being good. While it may seem natural to crave approval, the authors insist this is a misunderstanding. They explain that happiness doesn't come from being validated, it comes from fulfilling a deeper desire for meaning. They suggest this need for validation often comes from an upbringing based on rewards and punishments. Even when approval is gained, it costs something vital: your freedom. Living to satisfy others' standards means giving up your own life in the process. Why live in such a confined way? The desire for recognition often masks a fear of rejection. Unless you're okay with being judged and possibly disliked, you'll never live life on your own terms. To be praised is to be measured by someone else's criteria. If you chase compliments, you become a prisoner of those standards, trading your autonomy for fleeting approval. Even worse, approval is rarely fully under your control. No matter how hard you try, you can't force others to like you. When this pursuit becomes impossible, many people give up entirely. But rather than letting go of the need for validation, they internalize their failure. They create emotions like self-doubt and fear to explain their choice to stop trying. Deep down, they still want approval. They've just convinced themselves it's unreachable. Some then develop the belief that something about them is inherently unlikable, so they don't need to try anymore. But this belief traps them further, as it convinces them that change is impossible. Beyond personal identity, this craving for external validation also damages their relationships. People who seek constant approval often see life as a rivalry. If someone else succeeds, they feel they've lost. Approval becomes a finite resource. One person's gain is another's loss. This competitive lens makes people envious of others' success and even glad when others fail. As a result, genuine connection becomes impossible. According to Kishimi and Koga, the need to beat others disappears once you escape the approval trap. Relationships stop being competitive and start being cooperative. The second issue with validation seeking is that it turns relationships into transactions. Unhappy people who try to meet others' expectations often expect the same in return. When they don't get what they hoped for, recognition, gratitude, reciprocity, they feel betrayed. For example, someone may host a surprise party for a friend, but feel hurt when the favor isn't returned. Their generosity wasn't sincere, it was a trade. Now that we've examined the costs of chasing approval, let's look at the alternative, a life rooted in contribution. Instead of obsessing over how they're perceived, happy people find meaning in being helpful. They define usefulness for themselves, and as long as they believe they are being of service, they feel fulfilled. They don't need validation from others because they already know they matter. Helping others isn't a burden, it's a source of joy. And it's okay if helping makes you happy. In fact, that's often a more powerful motivator than obligation. Doing good out of duty still seeks recognition. Doing good for fulfillment is freedom. The authors also believe that your value doesn't come from achievements. Just existing, being with others, has worth. Happy people embrace this and accept themselves as they are, even with flaws or past mistakes. They don't see other people's success as a threat. Since they believe everyone has the power to bring joy just by being present, there's no need to compete. Finally, they live in the present. Happiness doesn't have to wait until some future milestone. It's available now, in this moment, if you recognize the positive effect you have on others. This doesn't mean abandoning your dreams, but rather enjoying the journey. If life ended today, would you feel it was worthwhile? The central message of the courage to be disliked is this: some people will never like you, and that's okay. Your task is to live a life true to yourself, even if others disapprove. Letting go of the need for approval is the first step toward true happiness. Kishimi and Koga emphasize that choosing a life of contribution over recognition leads to authentic relationships and a deep sense of fulfillment. When you're no longer focused on managing others' impressions of you, you're free to connect on a more honest, meaningful level. You're not performing a version of yourself to win approval. You're showing up as who you truly are. This form of living doesn't just improve how you feel. It transforms the way others relate to you. When you're no longer trying to manipulate outcomes or emotions, people feel safer and more open around you. Relationships no longer rely on unspoken transactions or silent expectations. Instead, they're built on mutual respect and presence. You give, not to be seen, but because giving reflects who you want to be. The authors stress that real happiness isn't about removing all negative emotion. It's about accepting discomfort when it arises, knowing that it doesn't define you, nor does it signal failure. The courage to be disliked is, in a sense, the courage to fully accept yourself and your decisions, even when they go against social norms or people's preferences. This self-acceptance isn't selfish. In fact, it's the foundation for healthy, lasting relationships and a meaningful life. They also remind us that no external condition or past mistake can block this path. You don't need to be healed, perfect, or approved of to begin living with purpose. The power lies in your current decisions, your willingness to shift your goals from pleasing others to building a life that aligns with your values. That change alone can free you from the invisible chains of fear, shame, and comparison. So what does that actually look like in daily life? It means refusing to live based on assumptions about what others expect. It means doing what you believe is right, even when misunderstood. It means taking actions aligned with who you want to become rather than who others want you to be. And when you succeed or fail, it means seeing yourself not through the lens of praise or blame, but with the steady eye of compassion and clarity. Kishimi and Koga's message is not one of defiance, but of liberation. They are not telling us to reject others, but to stop depending on them for self-worth. They remind us that a life of value isn't measured by applause, but by integrity and contribution. When you stop chasing recognition, you start living more freely. And in that freedom, real connection, peace, and joy can finally take root. Ultimately, the courage to be disliked is a call to reclaim your life from the opinions of others. It's an invitation to build a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. It's a reminder that happiness is not found in being admired, but in being authentic. And while not everyone will approve of who you are, you'll be free. And that, the authors argue, is the true definition of happiness. As you reflect on this message, it's important to understand that developing the courage to be disliked is not a one-time decision. It's a lifelong practice. Each day offers small moments where you must choose between pleasing others and staying true to yourself. In these moments, you may feel the discomfort of rejection, misunderstanding, or judgment. But Kishimi and Koga urge us to lean into that discomfort, because it's a sign you're no longer living in the shadow of others' expectations. They remind us that true freedom comes when you no longer feel the need to explain, defend, or justify your choices. You begin to act not from fear or obligation, but from clarity and purpose. This is not to say you abandon kindness or community. In fact, just the opposite. When you no longer depend on approval to feel whole, you have more capacity to give, support, and connect sincerely. The authors also point out that when you live authentically, you grant others permission to do the same. Your courage can inspire others to release their own fears and live with greater honesty. In that way, choosing to be disliked is also an act of leadership. It models what it means to live by principle rather than pressure. Moreover, when you stop measuring yourself by others' reactions, you develop a deeper sense of stability. Your self-worth no longer rises and falls based on how others treat you. You learn to ground yourself in contribution, purpose, and inner peace. This shift may not make life easier, but it will make life yours. And so, the courage to be disliked ultimately isn't about becoming indifferent or rebellious. It's about becoming free. Free to choose your own values. Free to walk your own path. Free to love and serve others without needing them to complete you. That kind of freedom doesn't come from changing the world around you. It comes from changing the goal you're living for. As Kishimi and Koga make clear, the choice to be happy is also the choice to be courageous. And the first step toward both is this simple yet profound realization: you don't need to be liked by everyone. You just need to be honest with yourself, useful to others on your own terms, and brave enough to live without compromise. This path that Kishimi and Koga lay out is not about rejecting others. It's about freeing yourself from emotional dependency on external approval. Once you realize that living to be liked is living according to someone else's script, you also begin to see how it prevents you from creating a life that's truly yours. The ability to be yourself only emerges when you fully accept that others will judge you and choose to live your truth anyway. Many people believe they need to accomplish something big or prove their worth in order to finally feel happy. But the authors show us that this belief is a trap. Real happiness isn't found in achievement, applause, or winning validation. It comes from recognizing that simply by being alive and offering sincere contributions to the world around you, you already matter. And when you let go of the need to impress others, you stop wasting your energy trying to live up to their expectations. Instead, that energy is redirected toward living a life that feels aligned with who you are. You begin to value presence over performance, honesty over approval, and purpose over popularity. Kishimi and Koga's core message is empowering. No matter your past, no matter your current situation, you can choose happiness. But to do that, you must also choose courage. The courage to be disliked is the courage to be free. The freedom to be your true self, contribute meaningfully, and live with peace regardless of who notices, applauds, or agrees. Because in the end, not everyone will like you. And that's perfectly okay. What matters most is that you respect the life you're building, that you walk forward with integrity, that you live not to impress, but to express, not to earn love, but to offer it freely, not to chase happiness, but to embody it. And once you realize that the only permission you need is your own, everything changes. To go even further into this way of thinking, we must examine the cultural and psychological conditioning that makes the desire for approval so deeply rooted. From a young age, most of us are taught that being good means meeting expectations, those of our parents, teachers, peers, and eventually, society at large. Rewards come when we behave. Punishments follow when we step out of line. Over time, this reward and punishment system evolves into a belief that our value depends on being accepted, praised, or validated by others. Kishimi and Koga challenge this belief at its core. They argue that this conditioning warps our sense of self and fosters a false idea that our worth must be earned. In reality, they say, our value is intrinsic. We don't need to achieve something extraordinary or conform to specific ideals to be worthy of love, respect, or happiness. The courage to be disliked is a rejection of this harmful narrative. It is a decision to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. Living this way doesn't mean ignoring feedback or isolating yourself. Rather, it means making peace with the reality that you cannot and should not be all things to all people. When you try to be universally liked, you dilute your authenticity. You begin to play roles instead of showing up as a whole person. But when you commit to your values and live in accordance with them, even if that means some disapproval, you reclaim your integrity. And in doing so, you create space for genuine connection, not just social acceptance. One of the most radical ideas in the book is the shift from a goal of approval to a goal of contribution. This change may seem subtle, but it reorients your entire experience of life. Approval is passive. You wait for others to offer it. Contribution is active. You decide what you can give. Approval is conditional. It can be taken away. Contribution is internal. It cannot be lost because it's rooted in purpose, not performance. This reorientation also changes the way we view failure. When your goal is to impress others, failure is devastating. It's proof you aren't enough. But when your goal is to contribute, failure becomes part of the process. Mistakes are not personal flaws, but learning experiences. They do not shake your sense of worth because your value was never based on outcomes in the first place. Kishimi and Koga also stress the importance of separating tasks, what they call task separation. It means learning to differentiate between what is your responsibility and what belongs to someone else. For example, how someone feels about you is their task, not yours. Your task is to act in line with your principles. If you confuse the two, you end up living your life to manage other people's feelings, which is a burden no one can carry sustainably. By mastering task separation, you gain emotional clarity. You stop taking on guilt for things beyond your control. You stop manipulating or managing how others see you. You begin to focus only on your part, showing up honestly, acting with intention, and letting go of the rest. In practice, this might look like saying no when it's hard, giving feedback that's true instead of popular, or letting go of relationships that are built on pleasing rather than mutual respect. These actions take strength, but they also bring immense relief. You no longer live in fear of rejection because you've stopped basing your peace on being liked. Another critical element is self-acceptance. Kishimi and Koga explain that you cannot fully be free or fully happy without accepting yourself as you are, including your imperfections. This isn't resignation, it's recognition. You acknowledge your strengths and flaws, not to excuse them, but to stop using them as a reason to feel unworthy. Self-acceptance allows you to live without constantly trying to fix, prove, or justify yourself. And from that place of acceptance, contribution becomes natural. When you're no longer seeking to become someone else, you can finally offer what is uniquely yours. Your life stops being about fitting in and becomes about showing up. And that shift from conformity to authenticity is what transforms not just your relationships, but your entire experience of being alive. Perhaps the most liberating idea of all is this: you don't need a reason to be happy. You don't need to wait for the perfect circumstances or for others to approve of your path. You don't need to earn happiness through achievement. You can simply decide to be happy now by letting go of what doesn't serve you and choosing what does. You can choose to live fully, honestly, and freely. Not tomorrow, but today. Because in the end, the question isn't, how do I make everyone like me? The real question is, am I living in a way that I can like myself? That is the courage to be disliked. And that is the beginning of real lasting freedom. Lasting freedom.